Welcome back to Sir Boats Yacht, where we explore the most fascinating vessels that have ever graced the water, from sleek modern yachts to historic floating marvels. Today we're stepping back in time to uncover the story of a one-of-a-kind vessel, the Floating Bethel. This was no ordinary river barge, and it wasn't a yacht built for luxury. Instead, it was a traveling church designed to bring faith, community, and a sense of belonging to people who lived along the winding banks of the Ohio River in the late 19th century. The Floating Bethel is one of those rare historical boats that combines the worlds of maritime design and social history. It was essentially a missionary vessel, but at its heart it was also an experiment in floating architecture and a fascinating piece of nautical engineering. It's not a boat you would buy for its speed or style, but it was built with a strong sense of purpose, and that gives it a unique place in the story of riverboats in America. Let's start with the key features of this remarkable vessel. At its core, the Floating Bethel was a wooden barge designed to carry the weight of a full-sized chapel. The hull was flat-bottomed, which is typical for river craft that need to navigate shallow waters like those of the Ohio River. Its broad and steady base gave the structure above it the stability of a floating platform. This was vital because the last thing you'd want is a congregation swaying more than the hymn they were singing. The stability of the barge meant it could serve as a proper gathering place even while moored against the banks of small towns and villages. Another key feature was its portability. The Floating Bethel could be towed up and down the river, allowing it to travel to places where building a permanent church was not possible or practical. Communities scattered along the riverbanks often lacked the resources or population to maintain their own places of worship. This floating chapel brought church to them in the most literal way. It was large enough to seat hundreds of people and often drew crowds whenever it arrived. This mobility gave it a kind of performance aspect that set it apart from traditional stationary churches. When it comes to design, the Floating Bethel balanced simplicity with functionality. The exterior resembled a modest chapel that you might see on land in the late 1800s. It had whitewashed wooden siding that reflected the sunlight during the day and glowed warmly under lanterns at night. The peaked roof gave it the unmistakable silhouette of a church building, and above the front gable a simple wooden cross announced its purpose to everyone watching from the shore. The overall effect was humble yet striking. Imagine seeing this floating white church slowly approaching your town along the river. You'd know instantly that something special was about to happen. From the side, the design showed its dual nature as both boat and building. The lower barge structure with its broad wooden hull supported the weight, while the superstructure looked like a traditional chapel placed on top. The two blended together surprisingly well. Even though it was not designed for speed or elegance, its sheer presence made an impression. There was something iconic about a church gliding quietly across the river waters, a symbol of faith and mobility combined. Now let's step inside, because the interior of the Floating Bethel was where the magic really happened. The design was simple but effective. The floor was made of wooden planks that creaked underfoot just like in any old riverboat. The walls were plain and whitewashed, so the focus remained on the congregation and the service rather than on decoration. The seating consisted of long rows of wooden pews lined up neatly on either side of a central aisle. These pews could seat up to 300 people, which was no small feat for a floating vessel. At the front stood a raised pulpit, a modest wooden platform where preachers could deliver their sermons. A wooden cross hung above it, reminding everyone of the purpose of the gathering. The windows along both sides were tall and narrow, letting in natural light during the day and offering glimpses of the river flowing by at night. Oil lamps were hung from the ceiling beams, casting a golden glow over the congregation and creating a warm, almost theatrical atmosphere. Imagine the reflection of those lights shimmering on the water outside while hymns echoed inside. It must have felt both intimate and awe-inspiring. In terms of performance, the Floating Bethel was not built to race or to travel independently. Instead, it relied on being towed by riverboats or tugboats to its next destination. Its flat-bottom hull meant it could navigate shallow waters and more close to shorelines where people could easily walk aboard. Performance in this case wasn't about speed or handling, but about reliability and stability. The fact that it could remain steady enough for hundreds of people to sit, stand, and even sing together without discomfort was an achievement in itself. Another performance aspect was logistical rather than nautical. The vessel served as a traveling missionary hub. It brought not only Sunday services but also community gatherings, weddings, baptisms, and religious education. Wherever it went, it performed the vital function of connecting isolated communities to a larger sense of faith and fellowship. In many ways, its performance was measured not in knots per hour but in the number of lives it touched and the communities it strengthened. When we talk about unique selling points, the Floating Bethel had quite a few. For one, it was the first of its kind in America. The idea of a floating church was not common at the time, and the novelty alone drew crowds. People came not just out of religious devotion but also curiosity. It was a boat, it was a church, it was a social event, all rolled into one. That combination made it a powerful tool for outreach. Another unique point was its symbolism. The Floating Bethel represented the ability of faith to travel to where it was needed most rather than requiring people to come to it. This was a radical inversion of the usual idea of building a church in one location and expecting worshippers to gather there. Instead, the church itself moved, bridging distances and dissolving barriers for communities along the Ohio River. This was more than convenience, it was inclusion. It was a way of saying, you are not forgotten, you matter, and we will come to you. The final unique selling point is the legacy of the Floating Bethel. While the original vessel was eventually destroyed by fire, its concept lived on, inspiring other missionary boats and even modern floating chapels. Its memory remains a testament to creativity, adaptability, and the human drive to connect even across difficult geographies. It also reminds us that boats are not just about commerce or leisure, they can also be about culture, spirit, and community. So in reviewing the Floating Bethel through the lens we use here on Sir Boats Yacht, we can say this wasn't a vessel designed for luxury cruising or high-speed performance. It was designed with a singular mission to bring people together. Its key features like the stable flat-bottom hull and portable design made it functional. Its modest but effective design gave it charm. Its interior created a sense of warmth and community. Its performance lay in its ability to navigate shallow rivers and its logistical role as a traveling church, and its unique selling points made it not just a vessel but a symbol of mobility, faith, and ingenuity. As we wrap up this look at the Floating Bethel, think about how different this is from the yachts and superyachts we usually review. Those vessels are about indulgence, technology, and status. The Floating Bethel, on the other hand, was about purpose, humility, and accessibility. Yet both tell us something important about boats. Boats have always been more than just machines for water travel. They are platforms for human imagination, whether it's luxury living at sea or a floating chapel bringing light to river towns. Each vessel carries with it a story. That's the story of the Floating Bethel, a boat that became a church that became a symbol, and a symbol that still inspires to this day. Here at Sir Boats Yacht, we believe every vessel has a tale worth telling, and the Floating Bethel proves that sometimes the simplest craft can leave the deepest legacy. Thanks for joining me on this historical voyage. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more reviews and explorations of the most fascinating boats from past and present. And until next time, this is Sir Boats Yacht signing off, reminding you that every boat has a soul and every voyage has a story.